Long exposure is an essential part of taking photographs at night, but it's not just taking pictures of still subjects. It can be a really effective technique for subjects in motion. So in this video, I'm going to show you two different approaches. One, photographing vehicles at night, and two, photographing fairground rides. One of my favourite subjects for long exposure photography are vehicles at night. During that long exposure, the headlights or brake lights will trail into surreal stripes across the frame. Now you'll need to set your phone into an expert or manual mode because you'll want to set the ISO sensitivity and shutter speed manually. So on this camera is the expert mode, and the first thing I'm going to do is set the ISO value to the lowest number, in this case 100. This is telling the camera to let in as little light as possible, coincidentally also giving it the best quality, and this will force me to use a longer shutter speed. I find the shutter of about 1 second is a good starting point. Now you're not going to be able to handhold any of those kind of exposures, so I've got the phone mounted on a little mini tripod here. As for a subject, I love double-decker buses because their height means that you get lights across the entire height of the frame. Now it's a case of experimenting. It depends how close the lights are, how bright they are, but generally I find starting with an exposure of 1 second is a great starting point. Then if the picture is too bright, you can just shorten that, say to half a second or quarter of a second. If the picture is too dark or the trails aren't long enough, then try a longer exposure, maybe 2 seconds or 4 seconds. When you take photographs at night, your phone generally wants to increase the sensitivity to freeze the action. It wants you to be able to take decent handheld shots without camera shake. But I want to see some motion. I want to see some blurring of the lights behind me on this merry-go-round. So what I've done is I've put the phone into manual mode. On some models it's called a professional mode, and this allows you to set the sensitivity and the shutter speed by hand. First thing I want to do is take the sensitivity off auto. It is going to try and choose a really high value so I can hand hold this, but I don't want to hand hold it. I want a nice long exposure, so choose the smallest value, in this case 100 ISO on this model. Now this picture is going to be too dark, so I want to choose a nice slower shutter speed, and this is all about experimenting. I normally start with an exposure of about 1 second, and I use the self timer to take the picture without any camera shake. From this point on, you just have to really try different settings. If the picture's too dark, you can get away with a longer exposure. Let's try 3 seconds. If the picture's too bright, choose something faster, maybe half a second. So you will need to take quite a few pictures in a row, adjusting the exposure to get that brightness right.